Welcome back to Mario Watches Everything, where we dive too deeply on shows that I love and have deemed too important. With me today is my guest, Nuv the Poet, as we discuss WandaVision. Hi, Nuv. How are you?
I'm doing well, Maria. How are you?
Not too bad. Thank you for joining us today. Nuv, you are known well for your poetry as well as your videos explaining the Sikh practice and religion. But you and I connected on our love of TV and movies. It's actually through our discussion of Eternals and other MCU projects where I discovered your love of superheroes and all things nerd. We realized how sitcoms raised us both, and we continue to dive deep and appreciate the reinvention of tropes and symbolism in modern day storytelling. So, of course, it made so much sense that I would ask you today to discuss WandaVision. So, thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to talk about this show with you.
Yeah, me too. I love this show. As you know, it's one of my favorites, especially as someone who studied film and television. And so all the elements of the television production that goes into this show, I can't wait to discuss.
Perfect. Right off the bat, what are your general feelings about WandaVision?
Like I said, one of my favorite shows, top five. So I'm obsessed with this show. I love the fact that it is a limited series. Like it's just one season. And then again, with all the elements of television, the kind of journey through decades of television and all the behind the scenes stuff in particular that really fascinates me, while also telling a story about this character Wanda Maximoff and grief and still keeping the larger MCU world a part of it. Like they balance so much in this show. It's incredible.
So, a quick recap for everyone who doesn't remember WandaVision as well or doesn't rewatch it on the regular like we do. WandaVision was actually like the first MCU series that was released in Disney Plus post Avengers Endgame. So officially like started off phase 4, I would say, of the MCU. It stars Wanda Maximoff, also known as the Scarlet Witch, played by Elizabeth Olsen perfectly. And it's about her and Vision, played by Paul Bentley. And these are two superpower beings living in a like idyllic suburban life in this Westview village of New Jersey. But it's not all that it seems. So we follow each episode, like Nav says, shifting through different decades of television. Then we watch these strange occurrences build up, and it's very clear that Wanda has created this false reality to cope with the grief of Vision's death. And she has unknowingly taken that whole town hostage just to play out this fantasy of her family, which is really heavy and deep and a lot to dive into. Other actors that are starring into this besides Elizabeth and Paul are Randall Park, Kat Dennings, Tiana Paris, Evan Peters, as well as Catherine Hahn. It just makes sense to start off with discussing Wanda herself. I think that she's probably one of the strongest female characters that's ever been written, let alone in the MCU. This show has approached her in so many different layers and dynamics. So it just makes sense to start with her. How do you feel about how Wanda deals with grief and how she uses TV to deal with it?
That's a really good question. And it's super relatable, specifically for us, but I think for a lot of people, right? TV is an escape for a lot of people. And so the backstory, the lore of her, loved American sitcoms when she was younger and everything. And then now this becoming the kind of core of her way of dealing with grief. I thought it was, first of all, super clever, again, from just like a writing standpoint. The way, again, of tying in all these elements into it and her going through this journey through the decades, through this story. It's an escape. It perfectly makes sense that this would be an escape because sitcoms are meant to be these very contained stories. Yeah, a beginning, middle, and end. There's an issue and it resolves by the end with 22 minutes shenanigans and everything. And it's just like a feel-good story, which is why they're so lasting and people love them so much. And so it makes sense that filled with so much grief, because yes, it's about Vision, but it's also about her brother and it's about all the things she's lost. And so for her to then want to avoid grief by going into this feel-good space of sitcoms, it's brilliant, honestly.
It really redefines comfort shows, right? Because everyone always talks about, oh, this is my comfort show. Like, this is the one that I watch. And it's like something that we all like understand instantly. But like Wanda really takes it to a next level because like I don't just have one comfort show, to be honest with you. Like I have many. It really depends on my mood. It also depends on like what I'm feeling and like the era of life that I was in. And like watching Wanda essentially go through a comfort show for each decade, not only does it show that she like really appreciates the narrative of a sitcom, which we will get into because like I think every episode just deserves focus. We were talking about this earlier. Like it deserves its own focus because like it's so meticulous with the details of like what the sitcom trend was at that time, like from like the two beds and the laugh tracks to like breaking the fourth walls. And we see that progression just like 6 episodes of a show. And that shows like Wanda's love for the narrative of a sitcom, but also shows that like she had a like comfort show for every genre, like every decade of a sitcom. And I really think that like actually truly like that's why it's so relatable, and that's why like I really appreciate that they showed grief to this because grief is a very hard topic to talk about. Like how do you show grief? And there's a lot of beautiful lines and sentiments in the show, but like to show that grief is coping, how do you cope with it? Escapism, it's just chills just thinking about it.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about the point you just made about having several comfort shows and how, in a way, like Wanda is exploring all these different comfort shows and also exploring different elements of her grief, right? Like each episode explores something different and is again her like trying to go further and further into this escapist mentality, and then keeps being brought back to reality as things are bursting through, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's Monica or a plane or a person, whatever.
Vision himself, but Vision's really like questioning her a lot throughout all of these storylines.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's very unfamiliar for him, and we'll get into it when we get into the particular episode, but he doesn't have a memory of anything pre
Yeah.
Westview, right? So he's left with so much uncertainty and questioning. And so yeah, it's just there's all these cracks that are and the more things start to like breach this reality she's created as things physically break in, whether it's again Monica or these agents that are being sent in, but also like her own mental space, right? This escapist world she's created, like she just digs deeper and deeper and tries to, and just changing things more and more. And I think like again, it's so symbolic of like it's avoidance, you know,
Yeah.
it's depression, it's there's moments of it's the 5 stages of grief, right?
Mhm.
So
And so, like, my two thoughts about this, like, what you brought up such a great point that I like two different trajectories, but like, one it shows like the fantasy of sitcoms too, because everyone, even the fourth wall, like real down to earth mentality of like The Office or like Parks and Rec, it's still fantasy, and like I feel like Vision being like, wait, we didn't discuss this. How did this wrap up so quickly? Like, and we'll discuss this in the second half of our segment, but like, it just really shows us sitcoms are just like this well-contained, like almost superficial look and realistic human actual suffering. So like, it's not the best, even though they are trying to be like human stories, it's still a very like cutesy way of looking at human stories. Showing Wanda's power through how she can manipulate the elements of what is broadcasted through the show, it's really creative to me. And like I'm sure as you, like as a poet, as a creator, that like, you know, as someone who wants to like manipulate the setting and like create these characters, to show her scope of her power to manipulate everyone around her to the point that she can roll credits when she wants to just to end a story. I
yeah,
was like, that's so clever in a way that like
yeah.
only like TV lovers could really truly be like, yeah, I get it.
Right, right. I mean, another element with that is they were showing, I think it was in this episode that we're going to talk about, episode 5, but they're using a drone or something to get into Westview. And then they show Darcy, and she's like, oh, she's controlling the camera. She only shows what she wants to show on screen for these people as well. But I also think it's fascinating because up until this point in the MCU, they haven't really explored Wanda, and if people know Wanda, they know she's so unbelievably powerful. And so the fact that they use this show to like get her to reach the point of true Scarlet Witch power and like identity, like there's another like Jimmy makes a joke. He's just like she has no alias, she has no other name.
This is actually a really good segment in getting into like maybe the MCU of it all. is that like obviously this is setting up for a lot of very important events afterwards. We don't have to discuss those projects because I know how you feel about those projects. By the way, Nuv hates hates Multiverse
Dude,
of Madness.
Multiverse of Madness is trash.
If you want to go off on a rant for 10 minutes, I will let you. Your platform is all yours, but we won't get into it. I don't like it either. I'm gonna be honest with you. Though I love Sam Raimi, though I love the elements of horror, I loved how badass she was in it. I just like hate that story a lot for
Yeah.
how much it wasn't in canon with WandaVision. But that's me and Kevin Feige's beef. I will talk to him about that later. No, to set up her as a Scarlet Witch as an X-Men fan, which we will also get into because there's a lot of X-Men elements in this, and it's also trying to set up for the greater MCU. What I love about WandaVision is that it also feels outside of the MCU, and like I can enjoy this and like almost forget Marvel and MCU exists. I obviously am a fan of superheroes. I obviously loved Marvel and MCU projects, but like I've been feeling a lot of fatigue with it and a lot of frustration with it recently. And it's mostly because of how much every project feels like a build up to something else rather than
Yeah.
a story in itself. And I really do appreciate that WandaVision still made sure to be an encapsulated story about her and her family. That like I wasn't like feeling like, oh, now I have to watch something else after this, you know? And so I think that yeah, fine, it was in a progression to her powers and like an address, like it finally addressed how what she was always supposed to be. But at the same time, they did her justice in her grief and gave her that time and effort. And I really will always appreciate this show for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love that it is a limited series, right? Yeah, they're always hinting towards other things, but this show, you can watch it, and this is something Marvel does really well, where they give the context of things. So even if you haven't seen the previous projects, like they let you know, they do a whole debriefing explaining like what happened to Vision and all this stuff. So like even if you haven't watched Infinity War, I don't know why I want, but like if someone just wanted to turn on WandaVision for no reason, you could at least understand this character and like what they're dealing with and going through, even if you haven't watched all 76 movies that exist now.
I'm glad you brought up Vision because like, Vision is a very interesting character in all this, mostly because my obsession with this is that Vision continues to subvert the tropes of sitcom husbands throughout this. And if you know anything about me, I'm really passionate about sitcom husbands for some reason. I really like when they're not what they're supposed to be. The fact that he actually loves Wanda. Kat Dennings plays Darcy, I believe. Was it Darcy Lewis in this? And she's like eating up the sitcom. Like, and I really love this about her because it's like everyone else is like the anomaly, what's going on in Westview? And she's just like, I'm here for the show. Like, I'm invested. And she and Vision end up meeting later on in the episode because she gets like sucked into the hex because like Wanda like so powerful that she expands the hex. So also the hex is known as the hexagon, like the little like entrapment of hex Westview that Wanda has taken hostage by accident because she's just so powerful. Oops. Anyways, so she's just like, they're so clear that you guys are in love. And I feel like the way Vision treats Wanda throughout all of these like very typical like sitcom storylines, but compared to those typical storylines, it's so clear that Vision defies the expectations because he really does love Wanda. He really is actually truly like a partner for her. No matter what, their relationship is the heart. Yeah, there's grief. I know that he's supposed to be the manifestation of like her grief, but at the same time, like I feel like this is how Vision would have acted in real life. Her relationship with him is just so beautiful to watch throughout all of this too.
That's kind of what makes the story so emotional, is that this is Vision, because she knows him so well that she would recreate an idea, a reality of Vision that would function to how he would, not what she wants him, right? It's a, and to your point of like subverting the trope, right? He's a very supportive and present and active husband versus like the doofy, clueless, hapless dad that usually is. I didn't even think about that part till you just said it. So that is super fascinating to think about, but it makes so much sense. You're right that like he's not someone who's incapable. He's actually the most capable because he's a humanoid or android or whatever.
What's a vibranium synthesoid is the exact term that Darcy uses, which I really loved. I think that's another reason why he like catches on so quickly and is almost like throwing a wrench in her like little sitcom scenarios because he is so present Because usually like the clumsy, goofy husband is the one that's like up to his own shenanigans and not paying attention. But like Vision's very much paying attention because he cares. So like that's why he's like questioning everything. And like we will talk about this in the next part, but like he's literally like, that was weird.
That makes so much sense. I didn't. No, I'm like understanding that so much on a deeper level now. Like, oh, you're right. Like all the things he notices, typically a sitcom dad wouldn't. And I think that also shakes Wanda because like Wanda's like, no, this is how it's supposed to go. Like you're just supposed to play along.
Because that's like what she watched. So she's like, well, this is what it's supposed to be. But like she forgot that he loves her.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's so cute. And that's why, like, I think that's why WandaVision's so important to watch. Just like a lot of other projects that, like, I love, like, Kevin can have himself. Like, it's important to watch these things because, like, you need to recognize that, like, when you are in a healthy, happy relationship, they will care.
Yeah.
We're so conditioned to believe that they won't care. They won't pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't care. I shouldn't pay attention. I don't need to question this. But actually, you really do. And it's not just because, like, Wanda's holding them hostage. It's just, like, Vision is trying to understand what's wrong with Wanda. Like, I think that's why the conversation with Kat Dennings, Darcy, like makes some like it's so important to me because he realizes like, oh my God, Wanda's in grief. She lost me twice. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. I get really emotional thinking about this show because it's truly such a beautiful love story and it's really apt to look on grief. And like I think grief is one of the hardest things humans have to go through, and not enough projects are about it, let alone a sitcom narrative of grief. Because unfortunately, grief is usually told in like with the storyline of Sparky, which is like, oh, this is sad, this sucks. But like
Right.
unfortunately, it's so much deeper than that. But the show does it very well. He questions so much. He starts picking up on so much so quickly. And it's just a sign that like he's so present and cares so much that like even the sitcom genre and the tropes don't distract him.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I didn't consciously think of that. That's so fascinating. That yeah, like he is able to be unaffected. It's something they talk about. I don't remember if it was in this episode that we're going to discuss, but they talk about it because he says like, "You can't control me" or something, and she goes, "Can't I?" And it's like, "Oh, okay, well, she can't." I guess maybe in the I don't know actually if she can. They never, but she wouldn't. Is the point, right? Like she,
It's very clear that Wanda is still figuring out her powers, maybe.
yeah,
Multiverse of Madness Wanda is very different compared to WandaVision
yeah.
powers. So I feel like maybe she's like learning and honing in on that later. So speaking of powers, we have to talk about the Agnes of it all. But like the Agnes like was like the wrench of it, right? Like besides like we had this like ongoing grief story, this story between WandaVision, this like S.W.O.R.D story with Monica, Jimmy, and like Darcy. But then like Agnes is thrown in as like this twist.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
I enjoyed it. The way they use Agatha is so fascinating because she reminded me of like Steve Urkel in a way.
Oh, also, yeah, good thing you brought this up. Agnes is the character she plays in Wanda's sitcom world, but her name is really Agatha. Same with Monica Rambeau. She's Geraldine in the sitcom world, but Monica Rambeau in real life. There's alias names, so yeah,
But
Agatha.
but yeah, like I just feel like she's that Steve Urkel type character of like, oh, this, and she is very like silly. She's always quippy. She comes in at the most random, obscure times and like interrupts.
And she's the one that always comes in, played brilliantly by Catherine Hahn.
It is interesting. I mean, it obviously makes sense with like the story later on that you discover that she's, you know, it was Agatha all along. Um, I definitely liked the character, and I liked again the journey that it helped Wanda getting into like the MCU, greater elements of it, because like it helped her become the Scarlet Witch. Also, I just want to take a moment for when she transforms into the Scarlet Witch, jaw dropped.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness.
Oh, the look is so good. It's perfect. Wanda Maximoff has had some questionable looks. Let's put it that way. I hated her look in Age of Ultron. I was like, who is this goth, like punk wannabe person? I knew they were trying to go for something, but like I have a lot of feelings about Age of Ultron. I feel like they finally figured out her look, and seeing her in all the looks from the sitcoms and like watching her like become this, it felt like healing. I feel like we finally saw her in her own element for sure.
You bring up a really interesting thought, but I think because in Age of Ultron Phase of 2, they were still figuring things out for their characters. especially when introducing new characters. But I think by WandaVision, they'd been successful with Infinity War Endgame now, so they're just like, we can go wild, right? And so like in the Halloween episode, they have her wear her Envision wear their comic accurate attire and stuff like that.
There was something about rewatching this that gave me a lot of nostalgia, because even though this came out in like 2021, I just remember like being so hopeful when I watched this project. Like after Endgame, this was the first project we really got. And I remember being like so freaking hyped after I saw this, because I'm just like, we're so back. This is something we've never seen before. Unfortunately, disappointed since then. But like, I just like, it was so exciting, you know?
Well, I think part of it is also, again, this came out in 2021, I believe.
It's been like 4 years since, yeah.
Right, but it was still like the height of the pandemic. And so we all were also contained, right? We were in our own hexes, our own bubbles and everything. And what were we doing? I mean, maybe we weren't using sitcoms, but people mostly were using like social media, TikTok and everything, like escapism in a similar vein.
Well, and this is when I think streaming got heavy. I feel like Avatar Last Airbender got on Netflix. This is when I started making TikTok content. Like it really, we really honed in. And I just remember this brought me back nostalgia wise of like being so excited about media and art and like storytelling all over again. And as like a fellow person in that space, yeah, I'm sure you understand.
I mean, it was also the fact that this was probably the first show or piece of media that really took on the TikTok commentary discourse community, right? Like, this was the first show people were making content about, like picking apart every moment, like, oh, this is an Easter egg, this is Mephisto. It never was, y'all. Get over it.
Never forget Mephisto.
But every scene was being dissected. We were all talking about it. That's my first recollection of like mass discourse on social media about a project.
And I remember being so intimidated because I'm like, everyone is so smart. Everyone has all these theories. I don't even know any of that. I just noticed like the one liner from Age of Ultron. And I was watching this. I remember Dottie having like yellow roses and being like, she's this character. And like everyone's theory about every character besides Mephisto. And I'm just like, I think that's like also what brought me back, because I was just like laughing at everyone's theory and how it just didn't come through. And I feel like that also brought us all closer in a weird way.
Yeah.
So since then, the MCU's obviously grown a lot. We've also seen, so I don't know if you saw Agatha all along, that like a branch out, but this brings in Tommy and Billy, who are Wanda's twins. They also now are like characters of their own. Do you have any hopes for them? How do you feel about those characters?
I'm excited to see what they do with them. I don't have many thoughts, but again, they're just expanding the world. They're pulling from the comics and giving us, things for just the stories that are naturally, it makes sense for her to have her kids and everything. And so yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with them. I mean, it seems like they'll be forming a young Avengers of some sort. Because like I forgot about this, but there was a scene. Was it at the end of Hawkeye? I don't remember, but Kamala contacts Kate Bishop. Yeah, she does the whole like Nick Fury thing.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Good thing you called it back. Shout out to Miss Marvel always. Just saying.
Yeah, I don't remember what project that was in. Maybe it was Hawkeye, or maybe it was the Marvels. I don't know. I genuinely don't even remember. But yeah. So I imagine they'll be involved in that potentially. I don't know.
Now we have to get into like the actual sitcoms of it all, because like I think that like there's so much to discuss when it comes to the details. Just like a brief understanding about the show. There's like 9 episodes to WandaVision. I think 6 episodes are like dedicated to the sitcoms, and they do from like, it's like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and 2000s. What's amazing about all of these episodes is that they have a whole title sequence with their own like soundtrack essentially for it, along with the Agatha All Along soundtrack, by the way. They also have like a dedicated commercials you would see in that time. And again, remember, this is all Wanda's manipulation and doing just to create this like sitcom world on top of the actual show going on and what's really been happening, with like Vision questioning it, with S.W.O.R.D trying to interfere, with like Agatha trying to be like understand what's going on. And I just think like the layers to this is absolutely brilliant. Only for us to like find out later that like Wanda literally watched all these shows growing up while going through her grief of losing her parents, losing her brother, losing vision. I feel like that in itself deserves a shout out for all the details and meticulous as TV lovers. So, feelings and thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this so much because, like, again, as I said at the top of the show, I am so obsessed with the production that went into this. The first episode was filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Oh,
Yeah,
really? I didn't know that.
yeah.
That
So
is so that laugh track, that like reaction is actually real time.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's
And it was
amazing.
like it was their family. It was like the cast and crew's like family and friends and stuff like that. Actually, the second episode, the '60s theme song, I have that as my ringtone because I love
No
it so much.
way!
Yeah,
I don't think I ever knew that personally.
yeah.
By the way,
So
Nev and I are best friends. Like we talk like every other day. So like we've been best friends for a while now, and like we talk all the time. So like I never knew that
yeah,
aside, like
yeah.
personally.
My
What?
my ringtone is the WandaVision. What WandaVision? Yeah, it's great.
I don't think I know you at all. What? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's such a good idea.
But yeah, then there's like the use of practical effects. So like in the first episode when they're like setting up the dinner and pouring the wine, the plates and all that, that's used like strings and like wiring to just set it up. It's all practical effects, which again, like they really tried to encompass the time of the sitcoms that they were living through in the actual production of it as well. And I thought that was fantastic. Even like
That's
the
so smart. That's what, and it gives like an authentic feel to like what we're watching for that reason.
right. They had to film Vision for the first couple of episodes with a blue like makeup because the red makeup wasn't working with the black and white well. So like when they put it into black and white, just the red I guess was not working well with it or whatever. So they had to actually paint in blue for like the first couple episodes that are in black and white. Fun little things like that, but just like knowing that the level of thought that they put into this, they actually talked to Dick Van Dyke. The creator like brainstormed to get feedback and like thoughts for like production. Yeah.
That gives me chills. I love this stuff. You know this. This is so awesome.
And then the big thing is like the name of each episode. I love so episode 1, film before a live studio audience.
Yeah, perfect.
Right. Episode 2, don't touch that dial. Right. Like
Yeah. Which, by the way, before sorry, I don't know who watches this show, but like there was a time where like there used to be like when people would watch and they would interact with TV shows, kind of like what like American Idol is, but that don't touch that dial is essentially like don't change that like channel, like which yeah, which I know which you and I like loving TV, like we love network TV, we love watching things live. And it's just like, yeah, we were watching the streaming, but like the callback to understanding that like how live television really made the sitcom world. Oh, I just love the homage.
so then episode 3 is called Now in Color. Then 4 is We Interrupt This Program. Again, it's like just those messages that were shown on television. We interrupt this program for breaking news or for whatever.
In the 70s with the political climate, it makes sense. Because that's the Brady Bunch episode. So like we interrupt this program. I feel like during that time there was a lot of like times of interruption in network television. So yeah.
And then episode 5, and part of the reason I chose this episode is because of the title and like its significance. So yeah, on a very special episode. So like we can get into it more when we actually talk about the episode, or we can talk about it now. It's up to you. The way again they homage to this concept, right, of a very special episode, which is like because sitcoms, again, I guess we'll just talk about it now. Sitcoms are so much about these lighthearted, easygoing stories, but when there's a very special episode, it's usually talking about a more serious issue.
We also grew up with, okay, so Nev and I are millennials. We grew up with like after school specials where like
Right.
Boy Meets World used to tell us about not smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like, stuff like that. Like, so like on a special, yeah, you're right. That like on a very special episode gives the connotation of like, this is going to be a serious one.
Right.
And so you're right. That was something that sitcoms were like well known for. I think they're filtered out now. Obviously, we don't have filler episodes, and that's a whole discussion in itself because we have limited episodes in general when it comes to our media these days. But yeah, no, back in the day, we would have enough episodes that they basically were like this like lesson for children.
Right. Yeah. They were often PSAs. Like, so I took this from tvtropes.org, but it said these episodes were far more common in the 1980s, fueled by then President Ronald Reagan's escalation of the war on drugs and his administration's Just Say No campaign, along with several high profile child abduction cases that made stranger danger a common worry among parents. They've fallen out of favor since then for most shows, due in part to the increasing number of shows where issues are more commonly discussed.
I kind of figured it out with like the way they lined up with the decade and the like homage in the title.
Right.
But no, it's good to know that there was a historical reference to it.
I think there's like a YouTube channel, Funny or Die, but they like recap these very special episodes of all these sitcoms, which I always just found entertaining. Again, I appreciate the care and like the interest into television that the creators and writers and everybody took to create this show, because it's just, I don't feel like you see this to this level usually.
As TV lovers, I will always recognize a fellow TV lover. This is how we became friends. And like this is where my show's interests. I love a show that cares and loves other TV shows. Like this whole idea of like knocking down like millennial jokes and like, oh, this wouldn't air nowadays. But like you have to understand, like, of course, nothing that came out in the 80s or 70s or 50s would ever air nowadays, let alone 2000s. But like you have to recognize that like we came from that. We have grown from that. So like recognizing and appreciating where we are now compared to where we were before, because that was the building blocks, is something that like you will always recognize in another show that loves television. And like I know it sounds so cheesy, but I truly believe that television shows, especially sitcoms, are an encapsulation, a time capsule of history, especially of that decade, because they have to be what is in trend of that time. And like this is another reason why I love WandaVision, because it goes to literally a decade to point out what what the most popular sitcom of that decade was, to point out that like that's like what like popularity of that time is significant enough for us to bring it back. And it's important because it still brings up history like you brought up, and it brings up where we were as a nation. Yeah. Like I think I will always love, there's a joke. I believe it's episode 2 of the whole 2 bed 1 bed thing. Um I remember hearing this as a child, that like they never showed bathrooms, or they never showed a toilet, I think, for a very long time. I think like, at least definitely for the I Love Lucy 50s time. I'm not sure when they start. I don't think they ever showed toilets, but they never showed a bathroom until like I think Brady Bunch time. So like the 70s maybe. So like I think it took that time. So like there's this like the idea of this vulgarity and like lewdness when it comes to like bathrooms, but also with like a man and wife, a husband wife sharing a bed. So like I just, it's so interesting. I don't even remember if Brady Bunch even showed that, but I do know that like Malcolm in the Middle like genre did show that decade. So like it's just, I think it just shows like where we are as a society, and I think it's really
Yeah.
important to recognize.
No, definitely by the 80s, 90s, that shifted. If you watch a sitcom from each decade, you'll see like the evolution of society or the course of society. You know, one of my favorite shows or one of my favorite sitcoms is Grounded for Life. And it came out in the 2000s, and it's very like the music, and it's very like punky, and like it's, I guess, a bit raunchy, even though it's like a PG-13, but it has those elements of like towing the line of raunchiness, you know, for a sitcom, because it's supposed to still be family friendly, but it's like, because it's the 2000s, and like the late 90s 2000s was a time when that cultural shift was happening in terms of like how we talk about, you know, sex, and to talk about like people and society and stuff like that. So it was just like thinking about that show compared to like the more wholesome nature of like Full House, right? It's very indicative of like where we are in society.
And it really shows like where we're going. Because like now we're in the mid of 2025, but like it's a lot is happening right now, and that's another reason why we're talking about the stuff we're talking about. And it's like it's really interesting on like where we're going to go from here. But at the same time, it's art and media is always going to be like this way to progress stories and progress the conversation. So it's, some of it's going to be a standstill, and I think that's really important to recognize now. And I think a lot of people, like, I always feel like TV and especially sitcoms is overlooked, because everyone's like, that's like low ball humor, that's like low ball understanding. But like I think at the same time, it is made for the masses, and therefore that's why it's so important. Because what are the masses watching? What does that mean for our, like, us as a population?
Right. So here's a question I have actually, because they only went up to the 2000s. So what show from the 2010s and from the 2020s so far would you think they'd homage?
That's a really good question. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think the fourth wall breakage, it's been a little bit frustrating because even Abbott Elementary, which is like my favorite sitcom of this time, and it's like 20, it came out in 2020s, after 2020s, it still broke the fourth wall. It was still like this documentary narrative style. But I also like shows like Ghost, which is also another sitcom. And that's like kind of going back to the classic narrative of shenanigans and like husband wife things. I almost feel like it would almost take on like a Schitt's Creek mentality.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of like this, I don't want to say privilege, but like essentially a growth story. Like they
Right.
would focus on something needing to develop and grow and be better
Yeah.
and give us hope. So like
Yeah.
I think that would be the like direction they would go to, because Schitt's Creek is probably one of the most popular and the best like encapsulation of what we were in the 2020s, which is like we were looking for hope. We were
Yeah.
looking for growth. So like I
Yeah.
feel like that's where they go. What do you think?
I would say, even though I've never seen it, maybe Ted Lasso.
Yeah, very similar vibes to
Yeah.
Schitt's Creek. Very similar vibes.
And then or the other one I thought of, one of our favorite shows, The Good Place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. All of these are the same vein.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, quick shout out to my first episode of The Good Place. If you like this episode, you should watch that one. So this will lead us to our next part of our segment, which is when we discuss and actually recap a full episode to better get into like all the stuff we were talking about in our general discussion. Like I mentioned, none of our guests will pick the episode. We decided to pick episode 5, called On a Very Special Episode. So a quick recap, the episode before we get an inside look into the MCU universe and what S.W.O.R.D has been up to. We follow this all through Monica Rambeau's story. She is the daughter of Maria Rambeau, who you will remember from Captain Marvel. This is all through post-blip. We're catching up on the events since Endgame. Her, Jimmy Woo, who we know from Ant-Man, and Dr. Darcy Lewis, who we know from Thor, team up outside of Westview to investigate the anomaly with S.W.O.R.D. It's revealed that Wanda has been living and playing out this little sitcom scenarios with her deceased hubby Vision. We find out that Monica is actually like sucked in and plays this character called Geraldine. And this last episode, Wanda gives birth to her twins, and it's all through Geraldine's help. But then this leads to this altercation and forces Wanda to throw her out of Westview. The episode ends with Monica Rambeau saying, "It's all Wanda," which goosebumps in itself. So every episode of this WandaVision starts out with the MCU opening, but then it leads to like the actual episode starting of like this little sitcom world that Wanda created. So we see this very 90s Full House, family ties, growing pains scenario where Wanda and Vision are trying to get the twins Tommy and Billy to go to sleep. In this process, we find out that like Wanda's magic doesn't work on them, which is very telling
Mm-hmm.
because this is where we see that like Wanda's magic is kind of limited.
Right.
Yeah. In the struggle, we get this classic sitcom moment where Wanda goes, "We need help." And this is on cue for the neighbor Agnes, played by Catherine Hahn, to come in with a complete audience applause with like a live studio audience. So laugh track shout out, audience shout out for sure. While Agnes offers to help in like a very neighborly sitcom fashion, Vision freaks out and everything gets super duper awkward. Agnes makes this comment of, "Should we do that again? Should we take it from the top?" Like as if she's actually playing out a scenario. And then after this, Wanda tries to play it off as a laugh track, but Vision's not convinced. He's just like, "What was that?" And meanwhile, like Agnes is making these like one-liner jokes. So like this moment right here, I feel like deserves a shout out because like this is obviously them trying to play out the scenario of like, this is normal, this is how everything happens, but like Vision is now questioning everything, which normally, like we discussed earlier, like a sitcom dad wouldn't. He would just play along with the jokes. I also think it's very telling how there's so many jokes in this sequence of events.
Right. Because in this episode, Vision is really questioning so much now. And so he's having those moments, the camera is different compared to like the shot is different compared to a sitcom shot. Sitcoms usually have more wide shots. It's a more atmospheric, it's open, it's kind of light, it keeps the lightness of it. But in drama shows, there's a lot of more close-ups because that's where you get the drama and the expression. And there's more movement in the camera. Like every time Vision is like having this conversation with Wanda or questioning something, the camera is different on him compared to the more like established shot and this like kind of center frame shot or like a wider shot. So I wanted to throw that out there.
No, that's really important because like it's obviously like a change in tone, but like there's also like again the show has so many details of like how they even like produced it, like you said earlier. So like yeah, no, that's very important. I'm really glad you brought it up. I only notice things like the vision, like the soundtrack, like the lack of like background noise because there's always this very corny, cheesy, like sentimental soundtrack, and it very much stops whenever like Vision is essentially breaking the fourth wall, but not really, but like breaking the fourth wall essentially in the series,
Right.
like Wanda's like reality. That's like another like added layer. After this, we hear that like the kids have stopped crying. This whole time, the kids have been crying. Agnes has been making a lot of like silly jokes. Like she makes a joke about like drinking and for the kids and her libido, but suddenly it all stops. And we find out that the kids have somehow aged to 5.
Yeah.
Like, all of a sudden. Like so Agnes makes this joke about like you can't control kids, but it's also like this like nod that like Wanda can't even control her kids. And like this is where like the whole like fact that her magic doesn't work on them actually comes in. I think this is interesting because it's like this whole show has been about how Wanda is so powerful, but this is when we find out that like Wanda's powers have limits. And it's to her own creations.
Yeah.
After this, we have a complete, like we mentioned earlier, this very cheesy opening, and it starts out with this family portrait of the whole WandaVision Maximoff family, complete with like each character's baby pictures, as well as like scenes from previous episodes, we have to assume. And then it ends with this picnic. I also really love that they come up with their own lyrics. Like they're like, "We got love, WandaVision." Like they have their own lyrics, and it was not just this episode. Most of the episodes before this came up with their own lyrics for just a title sequence to Wanda's life.
Yeah. Yeah, I got such Full House vibes from watching it. Like especially the camera shots that they use, like there's like a swooping over a hill and stuff like that. So I was just like, yeah. So but I love it. This is what I mean, like the care and the love for television that these creators have, where they put these things from these other shows, they put homages to other shows through these simple things. It's camera shots, it's or like whatever the framing or the different sequences, title sequences. It's just like, yeah, it's perfect.
What gets me too is like there's like this like they supplement this portrait being made, this like picnic scene, these pictures with like clips. And it's like to assume like we've been watching them this whole time. Like this show has been going on. And I feel like I just like laugh so hard because I'm like, you're assuming that there's like previous episode. Like this is a clip episode. Like we're getting these like Tommy and Billy, like, these characters we literally just met, Tommy and Billy. We're seeing these clips of them. And I'm like, I don't know these kids. Who are these clips from? But like that detail, because that's what shows do. And it's just, especially at that time with growing pains or like step by step, like this was like their thing, family ties, family matters. So I'm just like, it's so like detailed. And it's like, it doesn't bug you because it's like, it was very, very fitting for that time period.
Yeah. And I think with sitcoms specifically, they're meant to, because they're such self-contained stories, they're meant to invite people in no matter what episode it is. So like people, it's kind of just an accepted thing for or at least for the time. Now like sitcoms have evolved and like they maybe have more serialized storytelling elements to them, but particularly during those times it was very much episodic, whereas like one episode is its own story, the next is its own story. They don't really have any relevance. There's no overarching narrative. So yeah, they show you clips and they show you scenes from other stuff because it's fine. Like that's just the way that sitcoms were / still are. So yeah.
And that's why it works so well for the story. So meanwhile, outside of Westview, we now go back to Monica. We see her recalling the events of Westview. It's mixed in with images of her mother. And she's describing the feeling of being in Westview as drowning as if she's been in grief, which is a very fitting way to explain grief. Then she's reunited with Jimmy and Darcy, as well as Director Hayward, who is the head of S.W.O.R.D, and then they debrief everyone on what they know. It's very clear that Hayward sees Monica as this threat. Meanwhile, Jimmy, Monica, and Darcy are on the same page and thinking that he's a giant dick. Sorry. Yeah, essentially. Very favorite shout out of all this is Hayward saying, like, when referring to Monica and Pietro, is that the twins were radicalized while volunteering for Hydra. And Jimmy Woo goes, that's a gross oversimplification of the events, but okay. I'm a big fan of Jimmy Woo, if you couldn't tell. It's a very strong shout out. This is the moment where Hayward asks if there's like this, it's very obvious, but it also works because it comes out of nowhere where Hayward's like, hey, does she have any alias name? Does she know him for something else? And Jimmy's like, no, what are you talking about? But it's obviously a direct like nod to the audience of like Scarlet Witch, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But yeah, it's a very deliberate conversation that they have. There's a Pietro mention, which I think is important because of the events later. And I think there's this very important emphasis that Wanda is not a terrorist, which I think that, as you may understand, like in the Discord and like discussion, like this discourse of this all is important to recognize that Wanda is actually not the bad guy. She's just grieving.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's funny watching this episode again. I was like, yeah, Hayward sucks.
Hayward really sucks. He's like the fandom.
Yeah. And I mean, they do it intentionally, right? Like he's intended to be this very conniving, kind of like cartoonish villain. But yeah, so it works. It's just funny. I'm just like rewatching. I was like, man, I don't like this guy. Yeah, I know the show, and I just don't like him.
He says so many things. Like there's this, it's not mentioned in this episode, but it's the one after this, or like 2 episodes after this. Whenever like we finally see how Wanda like goes back to S.W.O.R.D to get Vision's body, which is actually like kind of the next event. But he's like, oh, you know, your soulmate, and no one has the power to bring your soulmate online. And she just like stares at him. He's like, oh, I mean, back to life. And it's like he just says these like comments that are so inhumane, essentially, and like make him so like very unempathetic human. Yeah. So then the moment concludes with Hayward showing that footage of Wanda breaking into S.W.O.R.D to retrieve Vision's body. This is like very significant because not only does this violate Vision's will, because like he doesn't want to be used as a weapon, which we find out later S.W.O.R.D is essentially, and Hayward is essentially to do, but it also suggests that Wanda has the power to bring him back to life, which is unheard of. And now this brings up the concern that Darcy puts so well that she has the only vibranium synthesoid playing Father Knows Best in suburbia, which brings up the concern of what happens when he learns the truth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like, again, like I think this episode is the best blending of the two stories and the two narratives, right? Of this sitcom story, but then also the actual going ons. Like they, you know, got to that point where they were teasing it. And now in this episode, they're really opening it up and for the audience to understand like what is happening. With still some mystery, but you know, at least getting a general idea.
It answered a lot of questions for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like now we kind of like are fully, because before we were watching it, it's just like we're watching Wanda in these cute little scenarios. It's a sitcom, like, you know, homage. But now it's like, oh, this is where it ties in, essentially, you know? But then we clip back to Westview and we see that meanwhile the twins have found a puppy. Tommy and Billy are washing him in a kitchen sink, trying to hide him from Wanda, only for it to be discovered innocently when it sneezes. A very, very adorable moment. And they brought the cutest puppy ever for this moment. Of course, the twins asked to keep him. There's no owners or no tags, and Vision is the deciding factor on this. He whispers that the kids have to be 10, and then they mischievously look at each other, and then they age themselves up to 10. So they go from 5 to 10 literally within, like, minutes. This is a very important moment because, like, Vision comes while all this is happening, while this classic shenanigans of like toddlers doing something cute is happening and having this lisp and not being able to talk properly is happening. Vision comes down as his human self. He usually plays like a human. He usually plays his vibranium self with his like red face, like you had mentioned earlier. But he comes down as Paul Bentley in this moment, and he whenever like Wanda asks why are you so formal, he says, "I suspect someone will be dropping by." And at that same moment, Agnes comes back with exactly the item they require because she's holding a doghouse. This scene continues with like Wanda not hiding her powers from Agnes, and Vision's very concerned. Wanda says she's tired of hiding, and he responds, "What aren't you telling me?" So like this scene really amplifies Vision's like distrust of everything happening, and him being very like keen to even the sitcom like tropes playing out so perfectly. Because I will say this, sitcom tropes unfortunately do play off too perfectly. Like, what do you mean she came by with a doghouse? Like, how could she have possibly known that?
Right. Well, that it just further, reinforces Wanda's escapist mentality, right? Because like in a sitcom, things play out exactly as the characters need them to, right? Like things generally always work out and things always happen when they need to happen or when they want them to happen or whatever. And so like for Wanda, this is the ultimate comfort for, her grief.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. Like that's why we love sitcoms and we escape to them, because it's like essentially like it's like stress doesn't exist in these moments. Um, yeah. So then this is further like amplified when Vision goes to his office. This is the first time computers and the internet is being introduced to everyone. There's like this like really silly, funny, weird moment where a S.W.O.R.D email comes through and everyone in the office is reading it out loud and they play it off as a joke. But Vision sees through this and he uses this to break through the character of Norm, played brilliantly by Aziz. Shout out to Dolly Boys really quickly. But he breaks through to this character, and then his real self comes through. We see that this character is now worried and in fear for his family, and then he specifically tells Vision that he has to stop her. She's in his head. It hurts so much. Vision can't handle this, so he turns Norm back. And whenever Norm comes back too, he essentially like makes this joke and plays it off to lighten the mood. And I found this movie very creepy because even though like sitcoms with their one-liners are supposed to be like silly, in the moment of like pain and like a reveal, it's almost like diabolical that they're using these one-liners to like play off what's really been happening this whole time. And I think the show does a really good job with that too, that like when Vision is coming to and realizing everything, the jokes almost seem sinister.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't
Yeah.
even think about that. Okay, yeah.
Because they're supposed to cut the tension, but it's almost as if they're trying to mask it,
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which unfortunately is something that we see in reality in humans. People always say like, "Oh, I'm only joking," when they're really telling the truth. And I
Right.
feel like WandaVision is essentially doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I don't know. It just like gave me the willies when I saw it this time.
Yeah. I mean, I think also again, what they do with it contributes to that. Like I think there is a laugh track at that moment, but you see Vision reacting and like I think the music it contrasts that laugh track, right? It's not this like humorous. You can tell like they play with the genres so much. It's so fascinating, and they blend them so seamlessly. Again, like they get these close-ups when Vision is awakening Norm and everything, and so it's shifting from that initial like wider two shot to now like a back and forth of each
Yes,
person's face.
like multicam versus like dramatic lens, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and so they like weave in and out of these different genres so seamlessly. It's amazing.
It's very like the details are so well done. The production value of this was very like obviously Marvel has the budget, but like the way they use their budget to be so meticulous in the details of like shifting genres, it's like something we will always appreciate, and we don't really get that much. I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at the same time as all of this is happening, Monica, Jimmy, and Darcy are like putting things together and planning on how to break through the hex, which again is like the hexagon. Um, this is when it's significantly important to mention. Monica mentions that Wanda's kids are her own, and that she's essentially rewriting reality. There's a Miss Marvel mention of how, like, there's a Captain Marvel mention of how, like, Captain Marvel could have beat Thanos as well. But there is a very obvious reaction of that Wanda could have beat Thanos if it wasn't for that blip, which I think is important because everyone always forgets that Wanda is so powerful. I wanted to shout that out. Uh, but then back in the sitcom world of Westview, we see the twins are training the dog Sparky. When they want to go show their dad, Wanda mentions that he's at work, but the kids are like, well, it's Saturday. So Wanda eventually has to tell them that, well, he needed a distraction. Naturally, the kids being 10, they're like, does he need a distraction from us? So then Wanda tries to like tie up the episode by giving this like life lesson of like, family is always there for you, complete with that sentimental, cheesy, like, like soundtrack for the sitcom, only for it to be like disrupted by Sparky growling, because at this time we see there's a suspicious flying object coming their way. This is S.W.O.R.D attempting to contact Wanda. This is what's interesting about this is that like S.W.O.R.D realizes that if they use things that like would make sense for the sitcom, it could penetrate the hex. So they use like 80s technology to get to Wanda. But we also find out that like Wanda has framed that object outside of what's being broadcasted. And so like she can decide what is being shown on this show versus what's not. Again, this ties in, like, I really love that they show Wanda's power through how she can manipulate the narrative. I
Hmm.
think it's like this extra layer of like cleverness of
Right.
like whenever it's like the unreliable narrator essentially, and
Yeah.
how like, she manipulates what's really going on in her show and her life and her story by like and by her powers.
Yeah. Yeah. And it again, it highlights her wanting to only put a camera on the things she like that make her feel better, right? So that's why she leaves certain things out of frame, or that's why she won't focus on things, because she doesn't want to spotlight those things. She just wants to think about the good stuff, the things that make her feel comfort and make her feel, at ease.
Yeah, that's really well said. So at this moment, Monica is supposed to be contacting Wanda, but she can't. So then Hayward orders to take a shot because he sucks, of course. Obviously, that leads to chaos and a breach to the hex. So we see all these S.W.O.R.D agents like swarming to the side of the hex, only for Wanda herself to reveal her through barrier of the hex. And I think this is a really cool moment. I love this moment so much because like this is the first time we see Wanda like essentially get out of her sitcom and
Yeah.
address what's going on in the MCU. Shout out to her accent coming through while she threatens them. I think it's a really cute moment. Also, shout out to like the lack of Romani representation of this whole story.
Yeah.
We didn't get into this earlier, but like Wanda Maximoff is clearly a Romani character, but unfortunately, the MCU is really weird about doing Romani representation, so they can never really fully address it or like state that Wanda Maximoff is a Romani character.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I never understand it. Especially for for Marvel, which has done a really good job for other identities and other backgrounds and other communities. And so it's always weird how there's certain communities that just don't get the same respect.
Yeah, and it like that, like that's the thing, like Wanda's character. So that's why like I brought up the whole like characterization of her styling, because like her hair changing, her accent changing. It's just like, why couldn't you? And like it comes out now, and it's like, okay, so why couldn't you just kind of stick to this whole time?
Yeah.
Why do you trickle it in here and there? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but we deserve better for Romani representation. Romani people deserve better for the representation the MCU offers them. Um,
Yeah.
we see that Monica is trying to talk to Wanda after this moment. She says that she didn't know the drones were armed, and that like they are all very aware that Wanda has control of what's going on. So then Monica Rambeau asks her, "What do you want, Wanda?" And she very confidently says, "I have what I want, and no one will take it from me again." And then she proceeds to leave, but then make sure all the guns are pointing towards Hayward when she does, which is a very badass moment. I love this moment so much. It's
Yeah.
such a good moment for her.
Oh, it's awesome. It's also really hot.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it.
No, I mean Elizabeth Olsen plays this character.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you cannot pretend like it's not a cool moment. Like when everyone's just like Wanda's not the most powerful Avenger. I'm like, did you watch WandaVision?
Yeah. No, they don't. It's stupid. Yeah.
She literally makes a tank into an ice cream truck.
Right. I mean, the whole point of this, not the whole point, but part of the point of the show is to establish her as pretty much the most powerful character,
And
right?
people get
Like,
question it still.
yeah, like the journey she goes through, and then the like understanding of her powers, and like the climactic ending of her becoming the Scarlet Witch officially and everything, which also, yeah, yeah. I was left speechless when I first saw that scene with the when she gets the outfit. It was,
Oh, it's perfect. It's
yeah.
just it's so that's what I say. I get so hyped when I watched this. I was so excited and so hyped.
Yeah, yeah, I was speechless for the whole show, just because, yeah, it's incredible the way they explore her character, and like, especially within one show, right? Like so far, we'd only gotten movies, right? And so you had seen Tony's journey through whatever 7 movies he's in, or whatever Cap's journey through 7, or I don't know the exact amount, but they you were seeing them through these movies, and then you were getting like tidbits here and there for other characters. This was like the first time a, I don't want to say lesser, but a non-main character was getting this like really prominent focus. And it was like, and the fact that it was a story about like grief, it wasn't just like a story about something so MCU esque,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
they were actually branching out. It was also like the first real female storyline too.
Yes, that's really,
Because
yeah,
Captain Marvel doesn't unfortunately count.
yeah. I mean,
She got one. She got this like one-off movie. It was very well done, but she got it after the events of Infinity War.
yeah,
So like that, it almost felt like too late,
yeah. It
and
was
it wasn't given this much time and effort and care.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Which I like Captain Marvel a lot, actually.
I also love Captain Marvel. I'm just saying that like they should have done it sooner.
Yeah, yeah. And then the Black Widow movie came out after
Oh,
the character was dead. So it's just,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So this was the first time a uh, MCU female character got like true focus. And again,
Before she died, before she was off
yeah,
sick.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it explored a human thing, right? It wasn't just like something. Again, it wasn't the MCU elements, the Scarlet Witch elements weren't the defining thing. It was her
Yeah.
dealing with her grief. You know,
Mhm.
it's like Vision's quote will be like forever echoed throughout history, honestly, of like, what is grief if not love persevering? Like
Which
that,
is such a beautiful like the quotes of grief have been so gorgeous throughout the
yeah.
series.
But like that's the thesis of the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And like so like medically speaking with my background, like grief is always like stigmatized essentially because like there's like this idea of like, oh, you should move on, you should get over it. This is not depression. But it's like but grief is actually supposed to last. It takes a year, if not more. And like you have to cope with loss essentially. And I don't think us as humans understand that like, grief is the hardest thing we will ever go through.
yeah, and I think, and I don't have any medical background or psychological background, but
But you're a human, so you
my
get
perspective
it.
of grief is like, I don't know if it ever truly goes away, right?
Exactly.
But it's something you learn to navigate and manage and live with,
Because grief is what makes you human,
right?
I think. Because loss is part of being a human.
Right. But like literally going to this quote that Vision said, it's why it's so timeless, is you feel grief because you care so deeply about this person, this thing, this whatever it is that you're
He
grieving.
says this as a synthesoid. Like,
Yeah.
he still gets it, though.
Right. That's what makes Vision such a cool character, especially in the
Yeah.
MCU, is like they humanize him so much.
Mm-hmm.
And like almost make him more human than some of the human characters we have, right? Like,
Yeah. And I think that's like my biggest issue with the MCU now, because it's almost as if they're like these caricatures.
yeah.
When before they gave the time and effort to make people make these characters human.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I don't want to get too much into this, but that was the biggest, for me, the biggest distinction between the MCU and the DCEU is
Mm-hmm.
that
Exactly.
the MCU, Kevin Feige was focusing on taking these superheroes and making them people, and whereas the DCU was like, let's just show these superheroes, and I was just
Yep.
like, but we don't care. This is so unrelated, but it's the same thing with professional wrestling, which I'm a huge fan of with WWE, is that like, sure, the action's really fun, but if you don't humanize these characters, I don't care what they're doing in the ring. Like, I just don't care about the moves
Well,
that they do.
it is related because it's the point. Like at the end of the day, this show is not just about the MCU. It's a show.
Yeah.
And like that's the important part of the show. Any series, any media that we should as an audience want to care about, this has to be an element of it. It has to be real.
Yeah.
That's essentially the point of like me talking about this. So I wanted to talk about this because it's like it's trying to recognize these real stories that we were given and give them more effort and just be like, this is what we want. We wanted to continue seeing this.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
successful.
I mean,
Yeah.
the reason, you and I know, the reason we get invested in shows isn't usually because of the stories. It's because of these characters and then like
Exactly.
caring about their experiences, and like by proxy the stories become important to us because it's what these characters that we like are experiencing and dealing with.
Yeah.
But like a random character going through, like, it was very evident, right? Like background characters that like have experiences. How much do you care about like a random background character versus like a character you've watched for like 4 seasons now struggle, and like, yeah, there's just so many, like, there's so many specific moments and characters coming to mind right now when I'm saying this. I realized, like, I was calling to, it's from Arrow, so this is the character of Black Canary, who was played with like Laurel Lance, and you'd seen her through 4 seasons. Season 1, she was the damsel in distress. Season 2, she was dealing with a drug addiction. Season 3, she was trying to like cope with the loss of her sister, and then season 4, she was like becoming a superhero, and then they kill her at the end of season 4, and I'm like, why would you do that?
Yeah, I do know this, actually.
Sorry, I'm still not over it.
Well, I have a lot of things about the DCU, so yeah.
Yeah.
Back to WandaVision.
Yes.
Okay. So I think this is so funny because it's like a very hot tension moment, and then it's cut to a commercial break
Yeah.
within the series itself. I think it's hilarious. It like is a paper towel brand called Lagos. It's like this typical housewife with like these kids. They have a very pigmented drink that they spill. They have a complete like comparison to like the competitor paper towel company. They even have this cute little tagline at the end. They make a whole commercial just for this fake series within Wanda's reality. And I think that's an important shout out.
Well, I think what's interesting about the commercials is they must be Wanda's subconscious.
Yeah.
Because she wouldn't actively make that. Like, that doesn't seem like something she would do. Because specifically with this one, so the paper towel is called Lagos. Lagos is where Civil War started. The movie.
And they bring up Lagos earlier on in the debrief. Hayward brings it on.
Right.
All the commercials do have a callback name to something specific in the MCU.
Right.
And every commercial above, sorry not to cut you off, but every episode before this that was like a sitcom like tribute had a commercial break that was very apt to what the decade was going through and what was being important products at that time. Like later on we find out like in the fourth wall breaking Office tribute episode, which is very 2000s, it's a depression episode, and it's like Nexus is what the drug is called. So like it's very much like it's in lore and in universe to the MCU, but also in universe to the homage that she's paying it like tribute to in that decade of sitcoms.
Right. But again, I don't think she would do this intentionally, right? So it must be her subconscious coming out. Because again, Lagos was a really difficult time for her because it's when she accidentally caused the death of people trying to save people from Crossbones. And so the tagline is even for when you make a mess you didn't mean to, and like
Ooh,
that was
okay,
also the
yeah,
catalyst of the entire Civil War and the Sokovia Accords and
yeah,
everything
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So like I'm just thinking about this now. Of it must be like her subconscious
You think it's
speaking.
subconscious? Yeah. No, I'll be honest with you. I thought it was purposeful, but it's very interesting. You're right that maybe it's like stuff that it's very clear that Wanda hasn't processed a lot of the
Right.
stuff she's gone through.
Because
So it's very valid that it probably was subconscious. Yeah.
and like one of the other commercials is like a Hydra watch or
Yeah.
something like that. Like she
Yeah.
wouldn't do that intentionally. Hydra is
Yeah.
a traumatic thing for her, right? And so
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
she wouldn't call upon that with intention. Anything that scares her, she throws away, she gets rid of, right? So
Essentially, all of this is out of her control too.
right.
She doesn't know what she's doing. So yeah, you're right about that too. But it's so crazy to me because like these are people that like exist in Westview. So she's making them play out these commercials.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is it's like obviously I will always defend Wanda Maximoff till I die. She's not a villain to me. But at the same time, it's like she does some diabolical things.
Right.
Yeah. So now we're suddenly back into the storyline of the twins. They're looking for their dog Sparky, who is suddenly lost. Wanda's confused, we're confused. Then all of a sudden we see that Sparky is no longer with us, and Agnes finds his body and has to tell everyone. She says that he's been poisoned by her azaleas, which we find out later as an audience that she's actually the reason he's unalived. Dead.
Sorry, I just thought of the song. That's when she reveals it.
Yeah.
She reveals it in her Agatha song.
It's diabolical too.
Yeah.
Like, why did you have to kill the dog?
Oh, man.
So obviously the storyline is important because it's like the twins processing grief, but at the same time, I'm just like, Agnes didn't have to do any of this.
Yeah.
I think like finding out that she did so much, I'm just like, why did you like? I understand Wanda acting out these scenarios because she is dealing with grief. Agnes was just there for fun,
Yeah.
just doing all these things. Agatha, I mean,
it was probably to observe and to like kind of understand Wanda, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably why she was doing a lot of these different things and like just being in the background to like gauge her powers and like what she understands. Yeah. So that's my guess. I don't know if that was the intention, but I think
it's partly a little bit of both. I think it's her because we know that she's like she's a shit starter. Like she is, you know, she likes to play around. She likes to be. I don't know if you saw like Agatha all along, but like she's not someone who like has essentially a moral compass. So like she just does stuff to like benefit her for her entertainment. So like I do think it's a little bit of like her wanting to see Wanda's powers, trying to figure out what this was because that's why she came in the first place. But also she's bored and wants to have fun.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, so it's a little bit of both.
Sure.
I think she killed the dog because she wanted to have fun. I don't see any reason why or maybe she did want to see if Wanda would bring it back. Who knows? But
maybe.
I don't know. So this comes up, this moment, I really love this moment on the rewatch because when the twins are attempted to like age themselves to like, you know, run away from the grief and the pain of this, Wanda's like, no, you can't do this. So they're like, Mom, fix this. You can fix anything. You can fix the dead. Agnes goes, oh, you can do that? Which obviously is a test. But the irony of everything Wanda says at this moment, because she's just like, the urge to run away the feeling is powerful. I know.
Yeah.
I can't reverse death no matter how sad. And it's like, oh my God, isn't that the pot caught in the kettle black?
Right.
The irony of it all. My favorite is whenever the kids are like, bring him back. And then Vision enters in that frame and goes, bring who back? Which is like a call out of like, well, Vision is dead.
Right. Yeah. Well, and this is also the what's the word I'm looking for? The element of the this episode of being a very special episode, right?
Yeah.
Is, you know, the death and grief and dealing with all of that. And so that's what makes this episode fit that title and that concept that they, you know, that the 80s and like other shows would do.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is like, you know, like the little theme and lesson about grief, essentially.
Right.
So then the show that we've been watching in the sitcom world ends with Vision joining Wanda in the kitchen to ask how the boys are doing. And this is usually like when they like tie up, but Vision at this point decides to confront her about Norm. And then Wanda suggests, why don't we turn in for the night? So then
So,
Vision's like, go ahead.
so this scene stuck out to me first time too. So there's when he's talking to her, he's first at the sink,
Yeah.
and again, this is where the shift happens. So it goes from like this wider shot to a
Yeah.
close up, and it pans up on him. You don't see pans in sitcoms. Like,
No, you don't.
sitcoms
Yeah.
just have a still
Like a fair
camera,
point. Yep.
multicam, and it's just still like a steady. And but there's a pan, and I was like, just the seamless transition between the genres and the filming and the oh my god, I love it so much.
It's very well done because so like we were talking about this earlier too. Like Wanda's like, let's turn in for the night. Vision's like, so you can change everything the next day. And he's like, you can't control me. And Wanda's like, can't I? And then she gets the title, like then she gets the credits rolling.
Yeah,
So like essentially to finish off like the Y sequence, like multicam sitcom. But it keeps going. Like their fight keeps going. And I love this moment because it's like we see the credits keep rolling. She doesn't have to keep the credits rolling, but she's like, no, we're ending this. And they're literally levitating. They're
yeah,
fighting. Vision is saying all this stuff, and the credits are just rolling as if this was the end of a show, but it's like clearly not. So now Vision's just like, what's outside of Westview? And then he reveals that like Vision has no recollection of his life before this, which was a big like reveal to me when I first watched this because I assumed it was the Vision we had been watching up until then.
mm-hmm.
But then I watched this and I was like, wait, this is not the same Vision. And it's like really changed things for me. And that's why I think it's very significant. All of this is unfortunately interrupted by like, a doorbell out of nowhere. Only to reveal Pietro, Wanda's brother, who is deceased. But the interesting part of this is that it's not the MCU canon Pietro as Darcy, who has been watching this whole time because she's so invested in the WandaVision show. And she says, they recast Pietro, and that is how the episode ends. But shout out that whenever Pietro enters, there is a audience like cheering. He makes a one-liner joke. He says, "Who's this popsicle?" And then the show ends.
Yeah.
Again, true sitcom fashion, they make a joke out of everything. There's a lot to unpack with this whole moment. Where would you like to start with that? Because I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah. I mean the I guess we could just go in order. So the conversation between Vision and Wanda, like that is my favorite scene from this episode
Okay.
when they're eventually levitating and just like arguing and yelling at each other. Because like for as much time as we've seen them together, they don't fight, they don't argue. So it's just like the fact that they're even at this point in general, and then like using their powers and just like displaying this sort of like literal elevated level of emotion, of frustration, of anger, and like I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, perfect. I agree with that completely, especially because like it's a lot of emotional, like Vision's like emotional work coming out because he's been going through so much, and like I feel like the fact that it is played off at the end by a joke by her brother, it's just like it's like there's this escalation only for it to be like womp womp. I love that Darcy is watching the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like as if it's literally a show. The comment about him being recast is so funny to me because obviously this is like a nod. I get a little frustrated talking about this part because I don't really understand how he was recast. For more context, Aaron Taylor Johnson actually is the MCU canon of Pietro, Wanda's brother in Age of Ultron. But Aaron Taylor Johnson is the X-Men.
Evan Peters, you mean?
Evan Peters is the actual like it's the X-Men version of what's his name in the
Quicksilver.
In because his name's not Pietro in it, is it? I don't think it is in X-Men.
It is.
Okay, it is. Okay, so it's Pietro as well. So it's but so Evan Peters is the guy that we see in WandaVision. So like that, like it's suggesting that there's this X-Men tie-in now that hasn't ever been introduced in the MCU. But at the same time, they never really address how it's him, but how it's also supposed to be Pietro. To the point that Wanda doesn't even understand it. and then it's like played off as a like like an innuendo joke at the end. So I never really fully understand it. So it's always really hard to address. But it's also so frustrating because it's like this is the moment that kind of diminishes this heightened moment of fight between Vision and Wanda.
Yeah. I think this was also an Agatha thing, and they just used it as an opportunity
Ah,
to uh, tease, Pietro. But like, yeah, he's gone, so they just used Evan Peters um, as a play on the idea because he did play Pietro in the X-Men universe.
yeah,
But in reality, he's just was like a. I think they say it in the finale. I forgot exactly, but he's like just a, a pawn for Agatha.
yeah, and he does come up in Agatha all along, but again, like it's kind of like a write off. He's just used as a one liner joke, which again, like essentially, it's like the whole point that like all this is just supposed to be like a one liner joke, but at the same time, it's just like why would they tease us? Um, yeah, it was a lot, but that is how this episode ends.
Yeah.
Feelings and thoughts in general.
Yeah, I mean, I took note of the fact that yes, they still ended it on a one liner, on a joke, on a silly
Yeah,
comment, because
yeah,
like they're still in a sitcom, like so it was just
hmm
very fitting in that way. Um, yeah, I mean the Pietro of it all is like watching it initially. It was very confusing, and I did think like, oh, maybe this is a multiverse type thing. It didn't go in that direction, which is fine. It didn't really bother me personally. I
yeah,
know a lot of people were bothered, but I don't care. Um,
yeah,
I thought it was fine. Was like neither here nor there for me. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was just one of those things. But yeah, like I said, the conversation, the whole episode building to this, like Vision's whole exploration of whatever's going on and getting to this point where now he's like, again, the synthesoid that's now like pretty much part human,
yeah,
emotionally he's like grown to become human essentially. And so them like having this clash is just really breaking Wanda's reality, or sorry, this created reality, this illusion that she's established. And I think that was like, again, this is a huge moment of it's the turning point because then we get into the next episode, which I know we're not going to discuss, but we can touch on it, is the
yeah. Of
Halloween
course.
special episode.
Yeah.
And Vision's just using it as an opportunity to really figure things out. And so,
hmm
but like this is the turning point of her reality, this reality she's created breaking down. And so I thought, yeah, it's just so well done.
Yeah. No, I feel like this is like she has control, 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 but then it shows like with the twins, she's losing control. This is the first sign of her losing control. Now
Yeah,
Vision's fighting back. And the next episode is literally her lost control. And like the episode where she breaks the fourth wall is basically her dealing with the fact that she has no control anymore. Which again, I want to emphasize that like Wanda doesn't really know what she's doing this whole time.
right,
And like, I really think this episode emphasizes that like Wanda may be the powerful being, but she doesn't know how to control her powers at all. And she even knows how she doesn't. She's like almost faking it like this whole
right.
time. And like I really, when I rewatch it, I'm always just like, wow, Wanda really didn't know what she was getting herself into in this. Like the whole scene of even like holding Westview hostage, she didn't mean to.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, that is true. I don't think she only believes she can control like, or she is controlling only what is like, I guess, within her
Yeah.
vicinity, her line of sight, and the things she's actively like doing. I don't
Mhm.
think she's aware that she is actually like
Yeah.
confined this town to this fate.
Yeah. Which we see in the finale essentially that like when she's just like no you guys can go but like I don't know I feel like I also that's like another like very relatable human feeling because it's just like you're not aware what you're capable of whenever you're in pain,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
we're all we have this effect on others even when we are suffering and we don't know it until we see the unfortunate consequences of it. And like I don't know, this is why Wanda will never do wrong for me even though she took a whole town hostage because I'm like girl I get it.
Yeah.
Who knows what I would have done, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And in fairness to her, like the second she realized it was hurting people, she wanted to relinquish it.
exactly. And this is why sorry I didn't mean to cut you off but like this is why like Multiverse of Madness bothers me so much because I'm like she's just such a villain in it. And I'm like, I don't think that really works
Yeah.
like this character. Sorry. I can see you like It
I
bothers me.
really do. Like, you know me, I don't despise much media. I despise Multiverse of Madness so much.
I, I love how much of a badass she is, but at the same time, I'm just like, I
Yeah,
don't think they did her character any justification. Like, it doesn't make sense for the character I've been watching.
right.
They just made her into this, like, they reduced her into like this, the crazy female, like,
Yeah,
because she wants her kids trope. And I'm just like, there was so much depth to her before this. Like, what?
right. Yeah, it very much does undo this story. Like, what I got from this show was her coming to terms with her grief and where she
Yeah.
was in her life without Vision now.
Mm-hmm.
But then you just literally are doing the same thing in Multiverse of Madness, just it's with her kids instead. And now she's intentional about it. That's the
Yeah.
other difference. Like,
And this is where I think that the downfall of MCU was that like they did all these things with the show only for the movies to like rewrite it.
yeah,
Yeah.
sad days.
That is. Anyways, so before we like end, is there any other thoughts about the show, about this episode that you want to discuss that we didn't get a chance to get into?
No, I think I covered everything that I wanted to. I mean, again, just to reiterate, love the production, the care that went into the production of it, and the homage to television.
Agreed.
I do love that we get to find that out in episode 8. You know, like
Yeah,
we learn her whole backstory. Oh, actually, that's something I want to touch upon.
of course.
So I love episode 8, but I also don't like the fact that, and it's not that this is the first time that this is done in a TV show, but I feel like this really kicked off this trend of, especially in the MCU, the penultimate episode, the second to last
Mm,
episode, is this
yeah,
big backstory reveal.
yeah.
Like they mystery for the entirety of the story, and then finally the episode right before the end, it's the big reveal. And I'm just like, this is such a formula now, and it
Yeah.
frustrates me.
It was so good at the moment.
Yes.
Then they did it over and over again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just like, can you not all the
Yeah.
time? But
To the point that like I remember still love Moon Knight, but like to the point that I was just like, let me just wait till the fourth episode.
yeah, it's just like, let me
Yeah.
wait till episode 5 so I know, everything. Because they really drag it out too much in a lot of shows of just like, this is a mystery and we don't know what's
Yeah.
going on.
So I feel like unfortunately with the MCU, the biggest thing about these limited series, which we realize now, is that like they're movies just clipped into episodes.
Yeah.
But with WandaVision, it worked because they made an episode in each episode with this narrative. But yeah, no, essentially it was every other show after this has been the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just had to note that because it's always a critique of mine.
Valid. Well, and this is why like I will always point out WandaVision compared to the rest of the MCU series, because I'm like, to me, WandaVision kind of stands out because like I like the other MCU series as much as I do, but I think WandaVision is actually actually a series.
Yeah.
The other shows are just like kind of projects for the MCU for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've said it several times now, but this is one of my favorite shows because it's just like, regardless of the MCU of it, you can just watch this show, and it really does tell a beautiful story about such a human experience. The characters just happen to be a superpowered witch and a synthesoid.
Yeah, that happened to be like the big parts of like phase 3 of MCU. But anyways,
Yeah, but it's such a touching story. And again, just going back to that quote and that whole end of that episode, that sequence of like when they're, the hex is kind of like closing in, and Vision and Wanda having their moment. It's just so yeah.
yeah,
It's
a really
it's so good.
I cry every time. Every time.
And I actually didn't like the finale the first time I watched it, because not that part. I liked that part, but I thought, they're focusing on like the big CGI stuff of it all. But again, it had purpose, and it was Wanda understanding herself. Like I didn't catch that the first time.
This is where it goes into the formula of like Act 3 big fight MCU formula. I didn't like it either, to be honest with you. I like the I like that moment, but I didn't like the rest. And yeah, it's because, and now I recognize why. Like now when I rewatch it, I'm like, it's very different compared to when I first rewatched it. But yeah, it's because like it's Act 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because like that's the thing, they avoid doing all the fun action stuff for the whole series, and then it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, the last 20-30 minutes you're gonna go crazy.
But like I'm okay with them avoiding the fun action stuff, but I wish they. It's funny. I'm surprised that they leaned into the action stuff towards the end of WandaVision because they didn't feel like that show. But it
Right.
also at the same time, it's like, but it's the MCU, so why did you expect Mario? You know?
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with them not doing it throughout the show. I just hate that it's like, oh, we're just saving it all for the end. Like that's more of an issue, is like either do it, mix it in throughout the series, or just don't like make it, oh, this is the final third act. Like sort of unrelated, but it's my issue with Wonder Woman, the Wonder Woman movie, because it's a similar thing. They tell this really beautiful
I have a lot of
story.
issues with Wonder Woman. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
but they tell this really amazing story of her like realizing that humanity is more complex. But then they're like, "Oh no, you just have to actually, you do have to actually just kill Ares." And I'm like, "What?" The whole point,
yeah, no,
the
that
whole
ending.
point was her to realize it's not that simple. But then you just made it that simple. Like no one brings this up when they talk about Wonder Woman, and I get frustrated because I'm like, did we all just skip that part? It ruins it for me. Like genuinely, I tell people it's a good movie, but the premise, they spit on their own premise so much, it ruins it for me.
I think it's also when it's like it was so everything the DCU gave us at the time was bad.
I know, but I
That's
can't just
why, and
forgive
that's why like everyone
something.
just like lets it go.
I
But like
hate that.
now watching it, I'm like I can't let any of this go. So
Yeah.
like I'm in the same vein as you of like no, I don't like it.
Well,
It
yeah,
doesn't make sense. Yeah,
you and I are always on the same.
yeah, of course.
So, but but like, but the thing is with WandaVision, it still works because the focus of her having this battle with Agatha and everything is her coming into her own and really understanding her identity as a Scarlet Witch. And they set it up with that silly conversation with Jimmy and Hayward of like, oh, what's her alias? And it foreshadows Agatha bringing up, oh, like there's this witch, the Scarlet Witch, and then she like steps into it in this battle with the runes and everything. It was just like, so it still works. I'm not like, that's why I came to appreciate it on a rewatch.
Yeah. It's I think like at the time we were again this was the first MCU project, so we were still figuring it out, and now it makes sense. But like yeah, no, eventually it's very formulaic, but it works for the story that we've been watching and for like the build up we were watching. But like I do think there was a lot of love and care and effort put into this that we just haven't gotten from the other MCU projects, especially the series.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think at least storytelling wise, I think the other MCU projects have gotten a lot of love, like specifically um, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Miss Marvel, Moon Knight. Culturally, those shows got a lot of care given to them. The stories were less cohesive, I'll
Yeah,
say.
it's the whole movie, but pieced up into a series essentially
Yeah,
mentality.
yeah.
Mhm.
But in terms of the narrative, this has way more of a like. Uh,
This gives more of a TV show.
yes.
So that rounds up our closing thoughts, I believe.
Yeah.
but before we do an outro, Nuv, where can everyone find you if they want to continue to hear your thoughts about sitcoms and TV?
So you can follow me at Nuv the Poet, Nav the Poet, no spaces, no underscores on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. But also, I have a wrestling podcast called the Big Pop Podcast. Wrestling is television, so that's why I love talking
It
about
is.
it.
It's a great genre of television too.
Yeah, so
Throwing it out
you
there.
can follow me there, the Big Pop Pod on Instagram and TikTok, and then the Big Pop Podcast on YouTube.
He's working on Smallville recaps, by the way, so shout out to that. I think it's very important that people, if you want to talk to him about superhero stuff, talk to him about Superman, just say.
Thank you.
All right. And this wraps up our episode for today. I hope you found a little bit of yourself in my media fueled ramblings. Remember, whether it's a sitcom, a movie, or a random moment in your day, there's always a story to connect with. You can follow this podcast on all your favorite social media platforms. We're under Mario Watches Everything on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. It really helps our show. If you want to support us even further, be sure to subscribe, like, share this episode with your friends, and leave a comment. We love hearing from you. And of course, don't forget to follow our amazing guests, Nuv, on all their media platforms. Until next time.